We have to start by recognizing a fundamental truth. Time is the most valuable asset you'll ever have. Not money, not talent, not connections, time. And the problem is, most people live like they have an endless supply of it. But you don't. None of us do. From the moment you wake up, your time is being spent, whether you're aware of it or not. And the difference between people who build meaningful, fulfilled lives and those who feel stuck or lost often comes down to how they treat this one resource. Because here's the reality. Every hour you waste is an hour subtracted from your potential, from your purpose, from the life you could be living. It's easy to say, I'll start tomorrow, or it's not the right time yet. But that illusion is a trap. There will always be distractions. There will always be reasons to delay. But the longer you postpone action, the more you reinforce the identity of someone who avoids. And the brain adapts to that. Neuroplasticity doesn't care if you're building strength or weakness. It just builds what you repeat. So when you waste time habitually, you're literally wiring yourself into patterns of avoidance, and that becomes who you are. What's even more dangerous is the subtlety with which we waste time. It's not always dramatic. It's not just binge watching shows for 10 hours or scrolling on your phone until 3 a.m. Sometimes it's simply the hours spent living passively, doing what feels easy instead of what feels meaningful. It's the quiet resignation to autopilot, to routine, to comfort. And that's the kind of time loss that goes unnoticed until years have passed and you look back wondering why you feel so unfulfilled. Now, I'm not saying you need to live every second in a hyper-productive state. That's not sustainable. But what I am saying is, be intentional. You need to know where your time is going, track it, audit it. Not in a rigid, obsessive way, but with clarity, because awareness precedes change. Once you start seeing time for what it really is, a non-renewable resource, you stop treating it carelessly. You stop giving it away to people who don't deserve it, to habits that don't serve you, to thoughts that drain you. Start asking yourself, if I lived every day the way I live today, who would I become in a year? If the answer doesn't make you proud, something needs to shift. Don't wait for rock bottom. Don't wait for some dramatic wake-up call. You don't need trauma to change. You need truth. And the truth is, you already have everything you need. You just have to stop wasting it. Most people are unknowingly addicted to comfort, and it's not their fault entirely. Our brains are wired to seek safety, to conserve energy, to avoid risk. But what happens when comfort becomes your default state? You stop growing. You stop pushing. You become someone who's technically alive, but not really living. And that's a slow, invisible decay. The hard truth is anything meaningful, any real transformation requires discomfort. Whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, progress is always preceded by challenge. And yet we spend so much of our lives avoiding it. Think about it. We engineer our environments for ease, one-click delivery, autoplay, endless entertainment. And while technology isn't inherently bad, what it does is condition us to expect low-effort satisfaction. But deep down, you know that the things that matter most don't come easy. Building discipline, strengthening your mind, healing relationships, developing purpose. None of that happens in your comfort zone. The brain changes through effort. And not just random effort, effort layered with intention and repetition. When you engage with difficult things on a consistent basis, your nervous system adapts. It learns to tolerate discomfort. And eventually it starts to seek it out, not in a masochistic way, but because it recognizes that's where the growth is. It's not about pushing yourself to the edge every single day. That's not sustainable. But it is about leaning into resistance when it shows up. When you feel the urge to quit the workout early, stay. When you're afraid to have that difficult conversation, speak. When you want to numb out with distractions, pause. These are the moments that rewire your system. These are the exact points where you can choose growth over regression. Avoiding discomfort doesn't make life easier in the long term. It just makes you weaker in facing it, and life will bring challenge. You can't escape that. But you can prepare, you can condition yourself. And the more you do, the less intimidated you'll be when it comes. You'll meet stress with strength, uncertainty with clarity, and setbacks with resilience. That's the power of choosing discomfort intentionally. It turns adversity into training. You don't need to suffer to become stronger, but you do need to challenge yourself consistently, because when you choose the hard path today, you build a version of yourself that can handle tomorrow. And that's the kind of life that doesn't just survive, it expands. It pushes boundaries. It creates meaning. So if your life feels stagnant, it's not because you lack potential. It's probably because you've been too comfortable for too long. And the only way out of that is through. We like to believe that who we are is defined by our thoughts, our dreams, maybe even our intentions. But the reality is, you're not what you think. You're not what you say you'll do. You are what you repeatedly do. Day in and day out, your habits are sculpting your identity quietly, consistently, and without asking for permission. The brain is built for pattern recognition. It doesn't care if the pattern is serving you or sabotaging you. It just memorizes whatever you feed it most often. So if you keep telling yourself you want to change, but your daily actions contradict that, the system won't budge. It only rewires through action. Let's make this practical. If every morning you hit snooze, check your phone, and start the day in reactive mode, you're not just wasting time, you're training yourself to avoid intentional living. On the other hand, even a small ritual, 5 minutes of focused stillness, a short workout, writing down your goals, can signal to your nervous system that something is shifting. And the power is in the repetition. The brain doesn't change with one massive act of willpower. It changes through small acts done consistently until they become automatic. We tend to romanticize breakthroughs, the big leap, the one moment that changes everything. But most of the time, it's not a dramatic transformation that alters your life. It's the compound effect of dozens, hundreds of small decisions. You don't suddenly become disciplined. You earn it by choosing discipline in moments when it would be easier not to. You don't just arrive at confidence, you build it by showing up when it's uncomfortable and proving to yourself again and again that you're someone who follows through. Every behavior you repeat is like a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. If you spend your evenings numbing out with distractions, that's a vote. If you spend it learning, reflecting, creating, that's also a vote. No one vote will define you, but they add up. Eventually they form your self-image, and once the brain sees that image as fixed, it starts defending it, whether it's helpful or not. That's why it's so hard to change from the outside in. You have to go inward first and reshape your behaviors from the ground up. The good news is, you don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You just need to start aligning your actions with your values. You want to be healthy? Start showing up for movement, even if it's only for 10 minutes. You want to be focused? Design your day to remove distractions and train deep attention. The shift happens when you stop waiting for motivation and start casting votes for the identity you want to embody. Because in the end, it's not what you hope for that builds your future, it's what you consistently do. We're living in a time where your attention is being fought over constantly. Every app, every notification, every scroll is designed to hijack your focus, and most people don't even realize it's happening. They think they're in control, but their minds are being shaped by algorithms, engineered for one thing: engagement, not growth. The problem is, attention is not just a passive experience. It's a filter for your entire life. What you focus on consistently becomes what you think about, how you feel, and ultimately who you become. So when your attention is scattered, your identity fragments with it. Distraction isn't just an inconvenience anymore. It's become a lifestyle. It's the norm. People move through their day in a fog of inputs, checking their phones dozens of times an hour, switching between tasks without finishing any, consuming more than they create. But your brain wasn't built for this. It's not designed to multitask at the depth we're asking of it. Each time you switch focus, there's a cost, cognitive residue. You lose clarity, you lose energy, you lose momentum, and over time, you lose connection with your own thoughts, with stillness, with purpose. What's even more damaging is how subtle the erosion is. You might think scrolling for 5 minutes doesn't matter, but those 5 minutes repeated across weeks and months turn into hundreds of hours, time you could have spent building, learning, reflecting, or simply being present. And it's not just about productivity, it's about agency. Because the more you allow distraction to control your mind, the harder it becomes to steer your own life. You get pulled into someone else's agenda, you lose the ability to focus deeply, to stay with discomfort, to resist impulsive urges. That's not just a habit issue, it's a nervous system issue. Focus is a skill, and like any skill, it can be trained. But it starts with awareness. Where is your attention going every day? How often are you letting external stimuli determine your internal state? Start there, track it, name it, then reclaim it. Set boundaries, not just physical ones, but neurological ones. Create environments that support deep work, not shallow input. Turn off the endless alerts. Build moments of silence into your day. Practice focusing on one thing at a time and completing it before moving to the next. This is how you strengthen your cognitive endurance. This is how you build a mind that doesn't get hijacked every time there's a ping or a buzz. Your attention is your life. Every day, you're training your brain to either resist distraction or surrender to it. And if you're not intentional about where your focus goes, someone else will decide for you. One of the most powerful yet invisible ways we waste our lives is by living for the approval of others. It's a subtle kind of prison because it doesn't always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like success. It looks like doing what's expected. It looks like fitting in. But underneath all of that is a constant low-grade anxiety. Am I doing this right? Do they like me? Will they accept me? And the more you let those questions drive your decisions, the further you drift from who you really are. It starts early. We're wired for social connection. From childhood, we learn that approval brings safety, praise, and belonging. And that wiring doesn't just disappear in adulthood. It gets more complex. Now, it's not just about pleasing a teacher or a parent. It's about curating a life that looks good enough to be validated. Social media amplifies this. Likes, views, comments. They seem harmless on the surface, but what they train your brain to do is chase external markers of worth instead of internal alignment. And that shift is dangerous because the moment your self-worth becomes dependent on other people's responses, you hand over the steering wheel of your life. The truth is, no one else can live your life for you. And yet so many people are walking around performing instead of living, saying what they think they're supposed to say, choosing careers, relationships, even personalities that feel acceptable, not authentic. And they wonder why they feel disconnected or unfulfilled. It's because deep down, your nervous system knows when you're not in integrity with yourself. That misalignment creates stress, not just emotional stress, but physiological stress. It wears on you. It affects your sleep, your energy, your ability to make clear decisions. You can't be fully present when part of your brain is constantly scanning for feedback. You don't need to be reckless. You don't need to reject everyone's input, but you do need to build a life that is rooted in your values, not just someone else's expectations. That takes courage. It's not always comfortable to disappoint others, but the alternative is far worse, a life where you quietly disappoint yourself every single day. And here's what's interesting. When you stop living for approval, you don't become more selfish, you become more grounded, more honest. And people can feel that. They may not always agree with you, but they respect authenticity because it's rare, because it's real. This isn't about being rebellious. It's about being responsible. Responsible for your own mind, your own choices, your own voice. Because if you don't trust yourself enough to lead your own life, someone else will do it for you. And they won't do it with your best interest in mind. There's this idea that someday a future version of you will just figure it all out. That you'll suddenly wake up with more discipline, more clarity, more motivation, and finally start living the life you've imagined. But the truth is that version of you doesn't magically arrive. They are built brick by brick, choice by choice, in the present moment. Every decision you make today is a blueprint. Every habit you reinforce is a vote. You're not waiting for your future self. You're actively creating them right now. And that's something most people overlook. They think they'll rise to the occasion when it matters, that when the pressure hits or the opportunity comes, they'll perform at their best. But you don't rise to the level of your potential, you fall to the level of your preparation. If you're not training your body to move, your mind to focus, your behavior to align with your values, then that future version of you remains a fantasy because they can't be built from intentions alone. They're built from practice. Think of your life like a neural path. With each repeated behavior, your brain lays down circuitry. Those circuits don't care if what you're doing is productive or destructive. They just memorize. So when you procrastinate today, avoid the hard conversation, skip the routine that grounds you, you're not just making a one-time choice. You're wiring your system to normalize those behaviors, and over time they become automatic. That's what makes change feel so hard, not because you're weak, but because your brain has adapted to what you've rehearsed. Now, the beauty of this system is that it can also work in your favor. Small decisions done consistently compound. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need to make slightly better choices repeatedly. You need to begin. Start where you are. Do one thing each day that your future self will thank you for. That might mean choosing movement over comfort, reflection over distraction, action over hesitation. These moments may seem small in isolation, but they become powerful when they become routine. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable at first. The system resists change because it craves predictability. But discomfort is the signal that you're doing something new, something that challenges your current wiring. That's not a sign to stop. It's a sign to keep going. Because on the other side of that discomfort is a more capable, more stable, more fulfilled version of you. One that isn't waiting around for life to happen, but is actively shaping it. The future isn't something you stumble into, it's something you design. And the most powerful tools you have for that design are the decisions you're making today.